right across your face.
Damn me if I was ever more in earnest in my life. Tom French of our regiment had her and her aunt together at Bar.
You are the most impudent rascal on earth!
What is it, General?
My lord, the fleet has moved out of Lightspeed. Comscan has detected an energy field protecting an area of the 6th planet of the Hoth system. The field is strong enough to deflect any bombardment.
The rebels are alerted to our presence.
All troops will debark for ground assault. Prepare to target the main generator. Distance to power generators.
17.2
For your eyes only.
No, Melina. That's not the answer. We'll turn him over to the Greek police.
Out of my way, James.
All right. But be prepared to dig those 2 graves.
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
The Holy Grail, Dr. Jones. The chalice used by Christ during the Last Supper. The cup that caught his blood at the crucifixion and was entrusted to Joseph of Arimathea.
The Arthur legend. I've heard this bedtime story before.
Eternal life, Dr. Jones.
If she were to be so foolish as to march on Westeros, she will not find, as her ancestor Aegon did, 7 disparate kingdoms frightened by her strange beasts.
My apologies, my lord, for interrupting your time of leisure. But I only want to discuss a few matters with you privately.
Never! But you let him die, made sure he succumbed.
Lannister. I always served Lannister.
Get him out of my sight.
Throw him in one of the black cells.
Oh, no. No, please.
I've come with that motivation for the last 3 hours.
If I wanted to do the same film again, is that the question? Which would I prefer? Which is my favorite film? My favorite film that I've ever made is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. For obvious reasons, it's a very good film. And working with people like Spielberg, you know, it's a privilege that you don't expect from life. And of course, Harrison Ford and Sean Connery. You know, they don't do badly, those actors, and it was a great pleasure and a great privilege to do it. I have to tell you, you don't know because you're Spanish, but in the English version, I'm playing an American, perhaps you know that, and halfway through the film, Spielberg said to me, "Julian, your accent is so good, you will never stop making American films from now on." I've never made one since.
Come on, shape it up, you guys.
Kids! Hey! I didn't know you were back. Where'd you get in?
Just now. Okay.
I never expected you to be out working.
Well, the academy didn't change you much.
Oh, I almost forgot. There's a battle going on right here in our system.
Not again, forget it!
What's all the
Can you
noise
come
about?
back down here and play the game?
That's no battle, hotshot. They're just sitting there. Probably afraid of tank of refueling.
But there was a lot of firing earlier. Hey!
I tell you, Luke, the rebellion's a long way from here. This planet, big hunk of nothing.
How long have you had these droids?
About 3 or 4 seasons.
They're up for sale if you want them.
Let me see your identification.
You don't need to see his identification.
We don't need to see his identification.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
He can go about his business.
You can go about your business.
Move along.
Move along. Move along.
Can I ask you how you got to be in Star Wars? how you were cast in Star Wars and what your experience of it was. I'm giving you something.
I had made a movie, The Eagle Has Landed. Irene E. Lamb, the casting director, also got the job to do the casting for Star Wars. So she contacted my agent and asked me to meet with George Lucas, and we talked, and he showed me a script. I then went back 3 or 4 times to meet with him, and eventually he offered me the role of Fixer. And it was the first weeks of the filming of Star Wars that was happening. They were filming first in Tunisia, and then the interior sequences were all done in London at Elstree Film Studios. When we were in Tunisia, while I was waiting to film Fixer sequences, Robert Watts, the production manager, who later became one of the producers on Indiana Jones, said that George would like to see me at the film location. He asked me if I could put on the costume of the Sand Trooper, and he said, it won't matter because no one will know that you're in costume, so when you see the Fixer and the Sand Trooper, nobody will know that you're the Sand Trooper because you're in costume. He handed me his script, and he looked at the scene. I met with Alec Guinness, and in the next hour, 2 hours, we filmed the entire sequence. So for me, it was about 30 minutes of work, and it became that famous scene. I think I took more time getting in and out of the costume.
You must remember that at that time, no one knew anything about Star Wars. He was right in on the beginning. We knew nothing about it. And when it got to my turn to do the second film, we just knew the first one had been wonderful. Well, he had no idea that it was going to become the franchise that it has become now. The reason you're sitting here is because of Star Wars.
The first film felt much more, even though it was a Hollywood movie, because it was being shot away from Hollywood, and no one in Europe knew who George Lucas was, and so it was much more like an independent movie, where everybody was, pitching in or helping to make the film work.
Which means that the money was very bad.
I think my pay for the Sand Trooper was about £62.
£62? Oh, as much as that.
I know.
It didn't change when the films were successful. The same with Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones we did for nothing.
What is the meaning of this? No, please.
You disappoint me, Grand Maester.
I've been an actor for nearly 60 years, and the only thing anybody is interested in at all is whether I screwed that girl. When you're doing a series, you must be prepared for anything. You sign a contract which says that you will do what you're told, as long as it's not dangerous, of course. Doing a scene with a naked person, male or female, is very difficult because you are embarrassed. They are embarrassed. They can't pretend they're not. They know they're being paid to have no clothes on, but they are embarrassed. So you have to be very careful to tread the right line, to be nice to them, to hope they will be nice to you, and not to stare at their breasts, although it would be unnatural not to look at them.
Was it a closed set when you were shooting those scenes?
Siempre.
Siempre. Sí.
I have a little story. Can I tell it? The first time this happened to me, a film called The Magus, starring Candice Bergen, who was at that time very famous indeed. I had a love scene with her, and I was very frightened. It was my first time. And I got in on the morning of the shooting to find that she had said she was not going to do the scene because she didn't know what she was going to tell her mother. So she decided to do it as long as her back was to the camera, her front was to me, but she still covered her breasts with sticking plaster. I was very nervous. I was a very young actor. She refused to do the bed scene. We were in Mallorca. They went into Palma, Mallorca, and they found a young woman with a body which was so wonderful, Candice Bergen should have prayed to God to have that body. But She was very nervous, this girl, and I was very nervous. I had to touch her, of course, and I had to comfort her all the time. And I spent 2.5 hours como eso. And I never got there. Not as an actor, as a character, I'm loyal to whoever is king. This is why I am 104 years old, and I haven't been killed yet.
I like the fact that I don't often get recognized. I'm not that famous. I like the fact that I have my private world. I spend a lot of time writing. I work on music, and I also direct productions. For me, it has never been about wanting to be famous. It is always for the love of the work.
He told me last night something quite wonderful. When he writes a song, he needs to practice it with people listening. So what he does, he goes into the London Underground system. He plays in the underground. So his songs are being heard by people who should be listening to them. And sometimes he writes very political songs, and he goes and plays them in particular rail stations in the underground where he knows that people will be there who need to hear what he has to say. And I think that's a wonderful way to use a talent. Fantastic.
Y cree que es una...
I'm used to the bad people losing because I'm always it and I always get killed. I can never do the sequence in a film. A sequel, I mean. I can never do the next film because I'm always dead. But I think that Empire Strikes Back is the best film of the first three because by that time the makers of the films really understood what they were doing and they were able to bring that knowledge to inform and enrich the second film. So it made it a much more interesting, emotional film as well as a physical film. I'm going to tell you a little story now about Alec Guinness. I'm sure you know this one of our greatest actors, without any question. He was in New York about 5 years after making the first Star Wars, and a lady came up with a little girl of 8 and said, "Oh, Sir Alec, oh, you're so wonderful. Can I have your autograph? My daughter has seen the film 8 times." And Sir Alec said, "I will give you my autograph if you promise that she never sees Star Wars again."
¿Cuáles son las claves por las que la tercera peli de Indiana Jones es tan divertida?
Steven Spielberg, Harrison Ford, Sean Connery, and Julian Glover. No, it was a really well-made film. A little anecdote about that. You remember at the end, there is a knight. This actor was one of my most famous actors in the theatre, called Robert Edison. He had played every Shakespeare play. He'd been an actor for 60 years. And this was his very first movie. But he had the best line in the whole film. He chose poorly.
Oh, okay. A Spy to Love Me. Not a lot of, people would not know this, but it was, this was the first time they had used the James Bond set at Pinewood Studios. I think it still probably is the largest interior studio in Europe. It has 2 water tanks that can take full-size submarines as props. And when we were filming, we're in the control room. The props department or the special effects department wanted to really impress Lewis Gilbert. They put in so much explosions that the canopy above where we were all standing and where Roger Moore, James Bond, was standing, caught fire. It's like a gauze cloth. It was a material that became like snowflakes. It all broke into pieces, little bits. So little bits of flame were falling. They were landing on us, the crew, but also they were landing on James Bond. As spectacular as the scene is, it was the reason that part of this was so spectacular is because everybody went overboard.
There is one deleted scene. Empire Strikes Back. You disappear from the movie and then you don't appear again. Do you remember any anecdote about shooting that scene?
I don't know why the scene was deleted. You never know why scenes are deleted. But I have a very short story to tell about the Battle of Hoth when I was in that giraffe. I had a lot of rubbish to talk, which I had learnt very carefully, but there was one line I couldn't ever remember. I went 16 takes on it, and the line was as follows. Well, I want you to really listen hard to see why I found it so difficult. Target the main generator. There was a very important scene of mine, however, which was cut in Game of Thrones, which I'm still very angry about. You can find it on outtakes on television now, but on your internet. It was a scene which absolutely explained why I am what I am. A scene on the beach with Charles Dance, when he says, "I know what you're doing, you're pretending to be something you're not." So I stop being like this, I stand up to my full height, I use my own proper voice as I'm using it now, and I explain to him why I am doing this. And they cut this scene, and it was absolutely essential if what I was doing was to be understood. And they keep on saying, "Oh, maybe we'll put it in later." They can't.